statutes and started really studying this stuff. One book we found was called Construction of Statutes, which, from my perspective, I lived 20 years in construction. I understand the need to have principles of construction, or how do you know if something's going to be built or stay up. And to find that in statutes, it showed me how statutes were built. So I used the same building philosophy and going in there and started seeing a clearer picture there. So by the time we got to court, we were a little bit more prepared. I had about a 3-hour defense. And I thought it was very well structured. And looking back, I found it was fundamentally flawed. We still hadn't found the last piece. And so the court date starts. We walk into court in Chilliwack, and the Crown comes up to me and says, "Hey, look, we're really busy here today. They just accidentally overbooked the day." And I said, "Okay, you know, we're looking for our name up on the docket in the courtroom, and they usually have them up there, and ours wasn't up there. Courtroom 1 wasn't up there." And then the last minute, they go and put the docket up for courtroom 1. And on there was not only my trial, which was scheduled for basically the whole day, 5 other trials and about 15 first appearances. It's like, wow, did they ever overbook the day? So we walked in there, and the courtroom filled up. It held about 35 people maybe, and it filled up. And it was sort of a different little atmosphere going on in there. And so the first thing we heard is the clerk of the court goes, "Oh, let's deal with this Perisky matter first." So I stood up and I said, "Hey, I don't even know if I'm still supposed to be here or not. Nobody's going to answer my question. Who do you guys want?" I mean, I was still arguing at that point. And they said, "Well, look, you know, we're not here to discuss that. We're just so busy. We overbooked the room. Would you mind going to Abbotsford?" And I thought, well, you know, I even think today is like, what would they have done if I said, "Yeah, I would mind"? I never, if people knew how naive we were at that point, and it's really, that's what I hope by showing you some of this stuff is you don't have to truly understand the whole legalese of it. You just have to understand the component of who you really are. Because we didn't understand 1/10 of what you're going to see tonight. So we stood there and she said, "Well, you know, we're overbooked here. We just so happen to have a spare courtroom and a spare judge waiting for you in Abbotsford. Would you like to go?" I said, "Well, I don't know if I got enough gas in my truck to get there." And so the judge looks at the Crown and says, "Well, would you give him $20 for gas?" He goes, "Oh, yeah. Oh, okay." And then, okay, let me think something else. "I don't think my truck will make it. You know, in construction, your truck gets beat up, so they look pretty bad. And I don't think my truck will make it." So she looked at the Crown. She goes, "Hey, will you lease him a vehicle?" And she goes, "Yeah." "Oh, okay." I said, "Well, can I get 2? Because I got a lot of friends here." Right? So I said, no, don't worry. I got enough gas. My truck will make it and stuff. We'll meet you down there." What we didn't really notice, because again, when you're in those situations, you're blinded to reality around you. We got up, we left the courtroom, and so did everybody in the courtroom get up and leave the courtroom. Because it was just all our friends that came to see it. What was the reason they sent us to Abbotsford in the first place? They were overbooked. Well, where was everybody else that was supposed to be there at 9:30? And so as we look back, our brother-in-law, he showed up about 20 minutes late, walked in the courtroom, it was empty. You know, he goes, "Oh, well, where's the Perisky case?" "Oh, they went to Abbotsford." Everybody knew where we went. A business associate of mine, he walked in maybe half hour later with a partner, and it was still empty. So we went, wow, something's really going on here. So we drove down to Abbotsford, and we walked into this other courtroom. It was really different. It had not all that ornate woodwork or bars or whatever. It was just an open room with the judge's bench at the end and a bunch of chairs. Walk in there, the clerk says, "Oh, come sit up here." You know, you didn't have to do all the formality. It was a whole different atmosphere there. And another thing we noticed when we drove up to the courthouse, we noticed we were studying this law of flags and stuff like that. And we looked up, and yes, they had a nice little Canadian flag over the courtroom, you know, just attached to a little 2-inch pole. So we said, okay, it has a flag there. Good. So we walked in, and then the court case starts going. And usually in a court case, the Crown gets up and they lay out their whole defense. And I was charged with Section 238, failing to comply to a demand letter. So it was real fundamentally simple. Did they send you the demand letter, and did you comply? Well, they sent me one, and they had proof. I didn't comply, so they had proof of that, so they thought. And so it's really fundamentally a simple court case. Like it's a no-brainer to win or lose if you haven't fulfilled it. So they got up and they laid out their case, and they had affidavits for this and affidavits for that, and that took us all the way up almost to lunch hour. And so the judge looks at me and she goes, "Well, do you have any evidence and stuff?" And I went, I knew by the study we have done is to realize there's a lot of stuff going on out there that we have no idea what words mean anymore. So I said, "Hey, I don't even know what that word means." So he says, "Well, it's close enough to lunch. Let's take a break and go see duty counsel, go ask somebody or whatever." So we had lunch. We're going out in the hallway there, and all my friends said, "Oh, man, it looks pretty bad. CCR had a really good case." And I said, "Well, thanks for your support. You know, you're going down." Yeah, but it looked really bad. So we had lunch and stuff, and we walked back in there. And I was getting prepared to present my defense. And I mean, I thought I had it nailed down really good. So I'm getting all fidgety and nervous and stuff, trying to get ready to do it. And the judge walks in. She sits down and she looks to the Crown. She goes, "Where does it say in the Income Tax Act you can tell him where he has to send the files?" And I go, "What do you mean? We always tell him where we want them to send it." "Well, it doesn't say that in the income tax that you can tell him where he has to send it." And they're going, "What?" And I started watching that the judge was starting to really spin this thing out of control, and the Crown's going, what? So the Crown would go for a huddle, and they call it a stand down, I call it a huddle, and they talk a little bit and come back and they throw in their interpretation of it. Judge gets a little perplexed, and as judge gets down, she says, "Well, I need a stand down." Judge gets down, goes into the back room, 5 to 10 minutes, comes back, and starts spinning another question. And this went back and forth probably 2 or 3 times. Finally to the point where the judge says, "No, I don't see you guys presented your case. Not enough evidence here," or whatever, case acquitted. And I didn't even have to say a word. I mean, I'm sitting there going, "Should I speak? No, she's doing good." I mean, she was taking over and did a really great job, so why should I open my mouth? And so that was it. We stood there, the judge says, case acquitted. And we knew that they could appeal it in 30 days, so we knew we weren't out of the woods. We waited the 30 days, no appeal. And we were going, wow, what happened here? My wife and I stood on the courthouse going, what happened? You see, as much of the study we've done, we still at that point didn't find this little piece, the importance of what had happened there. And that's what, even by the time we get to the break, we're going to take you to the simplicity of what happened in court that day. So as that progressed, stories like that, they sort of start drifting around, and we started getting emails and phone calls from people that wanted us to come and tell us what we did in court. It's like, well, we don't really know what we did yet. But what that did, we started meeting a lot of the people who were trying to find out the same thing, trying to figure out what was going on, what was this illusion we had going on in our country. And so over the next period of time, we started putting the pieces together and finding out what was really going on. And that started, basically, we just started getting busier and busier and busier. And after the first year, it was literally destroying my wife and my life. The phone was just constant. At that point, we looked at, because there was a lot of other people out there with the same passion, the same desire, and the same intent, we said, well, why don't we come together and form a group, Paradigm Education Group, to go out there and teach people their human rights so they can see through this illusion themselves. And that's really what brought us here today, is where Paradigm Education Group grew out of. It grew out of a couple scared people being forced into a situation that they really knew they had to stand up for something, regardless of the cost. So that brought us to where Paradigm is, and as Paradigm started growing and stuff, we started realizing that there was a lot of people out there across this country in a lot of pain who've been beat up big time by the system. Okay, I don't know if anybody's ever been audited or had this or had that, but it can get pretty brutal. But we realized is we could go out and tell these people, well, this is all you have to do, this is all you have to do, but that was not enough, because all it did was save them for that day. It didn't really educate them, and didn't really help them long term. So that sort of developed our mission statement: tell a man he's free, you free him for a day. Teach a man his rights, you free him for a lifetime. And that really became the foundation of Paradigm, to go out there and say, we will help anybody who wants to spend the time to get themselves educated, because we know it's not going to do anybody any good if we just did things for people. So as this progressive stuff, really we started being able to boil this stuff down to get it smaller and smaller and more concise and stuff, and that allowed us, that's why we never had a condensed version of our full course for a year or so later, because it took so long. That's what tonight's course is going to be about. It's your human rights and the illusion. We're going to talk about your human rights, and then we're going to talk about this thing we call the illusion. Okay? I guess the illusion is that feeling. How many people here have a feeling there's just something wrong in this country? Okay, I think that's usually what draws people into rooms like this, is like, we know something's wrong, we just can't find it ourselves. Well, really what we found, what is this illusion? The illusion is nothing more than a modern, legalized version of past master-servant relationships that plagued mankind on and off for centuries. It's nothing new is what you're going to see tonight, and by understanding that, you realize the answer is nothing new either. We just got to go back to the point before this illusion was developed. It was created to deceive us all into believing that we as natural persons living in this real world are now just legal persons living in their legal world. It's a duality that's out there. Here's how we sort of look at it, and it sort of makes sense when you look at it. Before we had a country, basically, say we're all just running around, we didn't have a country, we didn't give it a name, but we realized there was a lot of advantages coming together in the real world and working together, living in a society, creating a society. But we realized when we did that, there were still some people that never respected the human rights of others and would steal or hurt somebody, or breach a contract. So they put in a few layers of laws, good layers of laws, like the criminal code. Okay? The criminal code's great. Somebody breaks the law, you pick up the phone, and boom, you got society helping you. You're not out there alone. And then how about the non-criminal things, just like breach of contracts, right, which is our civil law system, not civil law like in Quebec, but our small claims